Brian Baldinger. They've got daily breakdowns of all the most exciting moments across the league. Hey, Brian.
Good morning. How you guys doing?
Morning, Baldy.
We're doing great. Thank you. Hope you're doing well.
It's not quite summer, but I know that you're somebody that does a lot of diving, right? Have you been doing that already?
Well, I normally do a lot of diving, except that, I'm just a complete spaz. And I tore my tricep a few weeks ago, so I'm looking at this ridiculous brace on my arm, and it's preventing me from going down below right now. So it's just it's a bad thing. I got to get through it. I got to just suck it up.
So is this like, you have to update me here, free diving, scuba diving? Do you dabble in both?
I do all that.
Oh.
I do all of it. Spearfishing, yeah, the whole thing.
Oh, you go
I prefer
spearfishing?
free diving though. But yeah, well, sometimes the lobster are calling. You got to go get them.
Man, that sounds manly. That's just a manly pursuit, spearfishing.
How'd you tear the tricep?
Well, I was in the Bahamas diving, and I tripped on my flippers, and I fell.
Tragic.
It's okay. We got our producer busted up his arm
Playing tennis.
running into the net.
Yeah, these are
All right.
unorthodox injuries here.
some things you really hate to have to admit, but the truth hurts sometimes, right?
Yeah, it does.
What's on tap for the Baldies for Memorial Day weekend?
What is on tap? Well, I'm here in Florida right now. I was at not probably too much. I mean, I really am a little limited. So I had a trip planned to Belize. I had to cancel that trip.
Wow.
So I'll probably, I got buddies in town right now. It's probably like one big beer drinking weekend, I think.
All right.
Sounds good.
Sounds fun.
All right, so we wanted to get your take on mostly what the Commanders have done in the offseason, and we wanted to start with the slot corner Sandstrom. A lot of people are high on him. We hear that you're high on him. You watch a lot of game film. Was that a good pick by Adam Peters and the Commanders? I
thought he was the best slot corner in this draft. Now, you could say, can these other guys go in there and play in the slot? Maybe. But of the guys that, that was their position in college for the most part, I thought Mike was really a talented player on a great team and covered a lot of ground, did what you had to do, whether it's, covering backside of the backfield, blitzing, you name it, just a really good, aggressive tackler. I thought it was a good pick. I thought it was one of the better picks. Well, I thought they had a good draft, but, when they went after Sandstrom, after Newton right there, I thought, okay. I could go down the list of guys if I remember correctly. I thought they had a really good draft, but Sandstrom was one of those guys I think you're going to plug and play that guy.
I thought that secondary in general was a little bit of a question mark after last year. I understand he had a couple young guys. Forbes started out pretty well, but then he struggled, and then he kind of got benched. And then they also drafted Martin, the safety. I don't know if he'll be a backup or not, but I thought, they added Michael Davis from the Chargers in free agency, Sanders still, as you mentioned. So I thought that the secondary in general might be a question mark, especially in a league that throws the ball a ton. So do you think it's a significant upgrade?
Well, Michael Davis he's had good moments, really good moments with the Chargers.
Mm-hmm.
He's a big corner. He's probably 6'3". He's a big corner.
Mm-hmm.
There was the worst secondary in football last year, and the Eagles were close, but they gave up 39 touchdown passes.
Right.
You're looking to try to cut that in half. Now it would help if the pass rush was a lot better than it was a year ago, and it didn't help that, Montez is in Chicago, et cetera. But it was not good last year. I would say that Sandstrom and Davis are definitely upgrades, but I was talking to Javon Holland in Miami yesterday, the Dolphins, and I'm like, when your safeties don't tackle well and they blow coverages, you give up a lot of touchdowns. And that's what happened last year. Like, they got to tighten all that up.
Mm-hmm.
And they got to take the ball away at a much higher rate than they ever did a year ago. And those things would help to solve a lot of the issues that team had.
What about on the offensive line? Everybody thought going in the offseason they got to upgrade it at tackle. They upgraded with center, and they brought in Allegretti. But then they drafted Brandon Coleman, and the interesting part there is everybody kind of sees him as a guard, even though he played guard and tackle at TCU. I think they're going to try him at tackle. I think that's what they see him as. What did you scout him at all? Do you have any feeling on him? And what sort of separates a legit tackle, and then somebody that has to move to guard?
It usually just comes down to length. He played left tackle at TCU last year. The games that I watched, some of these guys are projected, guards. Some guys can still play it. It just depends on the individual. I think they have to. Look, they have. I think right now, if you lined up at minicamp or OTAs or something, Cornelius Lucas might be your starting left tackle. Now, I like Luke. He's probably in his 10th year now, something like that. Like, he's been a survivor, and he's played pretty good, but I don't think he's any kind of a long-term answer at left tackle. So, they seem to have success just going to Kansas City and getting their backup players that become starters like, Wiley and Allegretti. Biadasz is probably, he's a good player. I don't think he's a great center, but he's a good player. So I think they've addressed certain things. If Coleman can play left tackle, that will help if he truly can. We don't really know right now. I don't know how he's going to line up or where he's going to line up.
We're joined by Brian Baldinger, Odyssey NFL Insider, host of the Odyssey original podcast, The Best Football Show. So on the defensive side, they have completely remade the linebacker room, bringing in Frankie Louvu, Bobby Wagner to bring in that Hall of Famer, the defensive leader, into that locker room. The big question is, can Wagner coming in, can that help bring out the best in Jamin Davis, a guy who's underachieved since the Ron Rivera regime drafted him in the first round a few years ago?
It's hard to say. I saw, like, when Bobby was in Seattle, they drafted Jordan Brooks out of Texas Tech. I saw him yesterday. Bobby really helped him. You could see it on the field how he helped him. Like, he was pointing and directing and doing all that kind of stuff, and he ended up leading the league in tackles. I think at least 1 year and maybe even 2 years. He became, and he tore his ACL. But I thought he really helped Jordan. Now, you got to ask yourself just what Bobby Wagner is at this point. Seattle's given up on him. The Rams have given up on him. He's still Bobby Wagner. I saw him last year. He's still ultra-focused. He's still a leader. The game is really important to him. He takes it important. So I think you're going to get leadership from Bobby. I just want to know, like, can he still react and cover and smash people the way he did for 10 straight years at one of the best that we've ever seen do it. So I think Davis can learn certainly from him. It is a group that has to play together. At some point, you have to be able to play man coverage. If you're an 11 personnel and it's third down and you're blitzing from somewhere, one linebacker's got to cover the tight end, the other back's got to cover the other linebackers got to cover the backs. And so when you're going up against some of these teams, Saquon in Philadelphia this year, whatever, those duties have to get exchanged, and you need talented players to be able to do it. Davis can still run. I don't know if he's always going in the right direction or not.
Well, that's what I want to ask you about Davis, and I feel like you're going to laugh at me, but because I know he's not the player that this guy I'm going to compare him to, but from a measurable standpoint, when you look at like what they did at the combine, Micah Parsons and Jamin are like similar. Like they're like his athleticism is off the charts. But maybe he's not recognizing things. I don't know. Can Quinn and Witt and these guys, can they find a little niche for him where they can get a lot more production from him?
That's possible. I would never compare him to Micah. Just completely
not as a player.
Animals,
but athletically,
no, I understand. I know what you're saying. Yeah, I don't know. I still, there's guys that you can look at a 40-yard dash or a 10-yard split or whatever, and you can make comparables. And you can see them on the field, and they don't.
I know one guy's a monster, the other guy's not. I get it.
Right, but no, look. That's Dan's job right now is to figure out what these guys. He did it in Dallas to a degree. Now they didn't have inside linebackers last year. They got hurt, and he was playing all these safeties at linebacker and. It was doing okay until they saw Green Bay in the playoffs, and then they ran right at him, and they couldn't do anything to stop him. I got to, we got to just see how this thing comes together. I don't want to say Dan can't work magic. The one thing he did in Dallas was over the last 3 years with Dan there, they led the league in takeaways. Now it helps that you got Micah and you got some corners that can take the ball away the way they did, but it started with pressure. And so I'm anxious to see what he does to affect quarterbacks. and how he does it. Does he have guys that can get there one-on-one? Does he have to, go deep into his bag of tricks to find certain pressures that work week in, week out? Like, that's what I think they kind of have to do right now.
All right, just kind of bouncing around the league. Out of the teams that have got new quarterbacks this year, all right, and I guess you can include the first-round picks, the rookies, but new quarterbacks, I'm going to throw Aaron Rodgers in there because he didn't play at all last year with the Jets. Cousins going to Atlanta, Russell Wilson going to Pittsburgh. What's been, like, in your opinion, the biggest significant change at quarterback from last year to this year?
Well, I mean, if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy and plays anywhere near what his talent is, the Jets are going to be a good football team because that defense is really good.
Right.
And they might have the best defensive front in football. But, their quarterbacks last year threw a grand total of 11 touchdown passes in 17 games. So, I mean, if Aaron Rodgers throws anywhere near 30 or more and that defense gets to play with a lead, they're going to win a lot of games. I think Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh's a great fit. I mean, he's been there every day. Everybody in Pittsburgh tells me, like, he's been unbelievable. The offensive line, it might be the best at some point when all these young kids really come together. It might be the best he's ever played behind. So, and he's going to have a really good defense on that side of the ball. I mean, Russell's going into a situation a lot like he had in Seattle at one point where they could really run the ball, and Pittsburgh will, and they could play the best defensive football. And so I think he's going to a really good situation. And I think that's a team that, look, they were 5-1 in their division last year, the toughest division in football. They were 5-1 last year. And so they're going to be very, very competitive in the AFC North. And I know you talk to guys at Pittsburgh, they feel like they're going to come out of that North and win it.
What about the idea of using Fields as like a slash? Could you see that potentially?
I don't know. I don't know how he catches the ball. If he's going to be used as a receiver, I guess you can have that. Like, I don't think Russell Wilson, or I don't think any quarterback wants to come off the field. Unless it's just hard. Like, I know they worked it in New Orleans for a little bit, and it was effective. I mean, but I just don't know if I want to take my quarterback out of any kind of a rhythm to put Justin Fields out there. I think it's Russell Wilson's job right now, and Justin Fields is there as the backup. And I don't think there's another role for him, at least initially, in this offense.
Who has the bigger year, real quick, Barkley in Philly or Derrick Henry in Baltimore?
Ooh, good question. I don't think Barkley's ever run behind an offensive line like he's going to see in Philadelphia.
Right.
I would say Saquon. He's younger. He's had a lot less carries. I'm not saying Derek can't do what we're used to seeing Derek do, but I think, Saquon's going to get some good runways to take off this year.
Right.
And I would say Saquon right now.
And defenses don't have to focus on him like they did with the Giants because you got two, basically all-pro receivers.
Well, and a quarterback they could take off at any time.
Exactly.
I mean, they should be very good offensively. There's very few weaknesses in that offense right now, as it's and they got a new coordinator that has had some good days in this league in Kellen Moore. So I mean, I expect that team to completely rebound from that atrocious collapse they had last year.
Brian, best of luck with recovery on the triceps injury.
Oh yeah,
and always appreciate having you on.
Have fun this weekend, bro.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
It's Brian Baldinger, Odyssey NFL insider, host of the Odyssey original podcast, The Best Football Show.